My name is Peter and I'm going to take you around this Toyota CHR to show you why this is an exciting car. This is a car that in its second generation now, and the first generation was launched by Toyota to showcase that they could also make exciting cars. Back in those days they made a lot of very reliable cars, but maybe a little bit boring. And this, its predecessor at least, was supposed to be the exciting one. And this one obviously has to follow up on that. And I think here on the front starting, it looks quite exciting. I noticed that every time I walk out of this car in my parking garage, I was like, ooh, nice, especially in this emotion red color. I think it looks really nice. Starting here on the front with the light signature, very exciting. The daytime running lights here with the Toyota Prisma LED beams over here. A lot of light at night, very nice. And I think overall the front design looks pretty aggressive and very modern, very fresh. I think that's really well judged and done by Toyota, especially with this two-tone black also on the roof. I think it looks quite nice. We got a lot of intake here because it is the plug-in hybrid, so there's a combustion engine here in the front and hybrid drive available as well. With a little bit of spoilers, I think it's an overall quite successful design. I think it looks really good. When we go around the car, 19-inch wheels on this version. You can go a little smaller and a little bigger as well depending on the version. More on those later in the video. And here you can really see that two-tone effect with the black roof, the emotion red color, and then more black here on the bottom. Now you notice that it's not a big car. Standing in front of it, it's not super big, 4.36 m, so it's a compact SUV. I'm not really sure if it's a full SUV kind of idea. It's more of a crossover because it's a bit higher but not that high. But it is quite a stylish design. And with 4.36 m, it's also a size that's very manageable in and around town, parking garages and so on, but still very usable on the inside, as we'll see later. Walking down the car, here is the fuel tank. Because this is the plug-in hybrid version. There's also two regular hybrids available, but we got the plug-in with us today. So you can just drive purely on your engine if you want to, or if your battery is empty, but you also have the option to drive fully electric. Here on the back, there is again a lot of design going on. We got these roof spoilers for extra aerodynamics, and also the whole shape of the car is meant to be very aerodynamic. There's a lot of creases and bulges and everything to make the car as slippery as possible. Another thing that they didn't do to make the car very slippery was a rear wiper. Now, obviously the argument's always like, yeah, it's aerodynamically not efficient and it looks ugly, blah, 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 which I'm sure is true. And then they say, yeah, the rear window is steep enough that the droplets roll off. And with the reheating, you can do a lot of things, yada, 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 which is all true, I'm sure. But the fact is, if you're standing still at a traffic light, or if you don't have a parking garage at home, your window will always be wet. So that is annoying. I understand the design choice, but the consequences are that you're constantly dealing with water on your rear window. It's not ideal. And even when you're driving, it is not constantly like blowing off or anything, because your window is still wet even while driving. I left the cables in for scale, a little over 300 liters here under the shelf. This is, by the way, not the sort of fabric-y shelf in other Toyotas that you can fold up. It's just a hard unit, which is a little bit better for sound insulation, but obviously slightly less practical if you want to stow it away. Plenty of space here, 300 and a bit liters. It's not a lot, but it's very usable. So this is ideal for maybe a weekend away, sports stuff, kid stuff, all that stuff, no issues whatsoever. But obviously not big enough for a full holiday or a ski trip or anything. There's a little space here under the boot too, under the floor. So you got your emergency stuff, tire kit, and even you can lift this up even further. There's a little bit of space back here as well. So very usable, even though it's not super big. Last but not least on the tour is the charging situation. The charger is over here. No fast charging available, just 6.6 kilowatts of charging for the 13.6 kilowatt hour battery. Now that is not a lot, but the charging still takes 2.5 hours if you use that 6.6 kilowatts. Toyota says our customers aren't asking for it. The people that buy this car have a driveway or a parking garage or at least a charger in their street. So they have charging options, and if not those, then they can charge at work. And the people that don't have those options, they will buy the regular hybrid. It's an argument, and I'm sure it's partly true. On the other hand, you sort of disqualify a whole group of people that might want to have the plug-in version, but don't have those charging options. And then if there's no fast charging available, and if you're constantly depending on charging at the hardware store, for example, or at the supermarket, then it's just not fast enough. So that's the trade-off that you make. So with a very exciting exterior, we're obviously expecting an exciting interior as well. And it's partly true. So let's do a round through the cockpit. It starts off well here on the side with some nice ambient lighting strips, some nice design lines, and also some nice materials actually. There's a bit of Alcantara here. All the things that you touch are soft, and even the material up here is not hard plastic. It's also not soft plastic, but it's sort of in the middle. It's a bit squidgy, but overall not uncomfortable. So let's call it that. Moving to the side, we have a typical Toyota steering wheel. So real buttons all around, nothing swipey or capacitive here. So excellent. It is possible, people. It is possible. Volkswagens and Audis of the world. Traditional stocks for your wipers and your lights too. And overall, easy to maneuver around the steering wheel in terms of operating your systems. Cruise control on one side, all your driver aids and other systems on the right. Some volume control and some play pause things. And your voice control, pretty simple, pretty self-explanatory and very efficient. I quite like that. What I don't like so much is the sensors here on the top of the steering wheel. They obviously are constantly monitoring you to make sure that you don't fall asleep. But they're quite sensitive, so they're constantly giving you warning messages if you look around a little bit. For example, if you're looking for a street or something, like, oh, pay attention, look at the road ahead. A little bit annoying, but very, very safe. Looking through the steering wheel, I got my driver's display, which is a bit of a Christmas tree full of symbols, lights, and colors. It's a bit busy for my taste, to be honest. But this version also has a head-up display, and I find if you drive with a head-up display often, you tend to not look at your traditional display that much. All the information is on the head-up display, your speed, where you're going, navigation, and so on. And the safety systems even project things on the head-up display in this car. So when there's a pedestrian coming, you get some arrows and some crossing warnings. So that's actually quite convenient, and I find myself using the head-up display a lot more than the screen down here. Moving to the middle, we got the big infotainment display, which is actually super usable, very responsive, easy to use. It's not the most sophisticated system in terms of graphics or anything, but it is all very functional. So, nothing going wrong here. Very much everything you can want to do with a display like this, you can do it here. It's not the most elaborate, crazy deep dive into the car, but it's very functional and it does everything you want it to do. So that's good. I'm not, too sad about this. It works very well. All is good there. What is also good is the climate control down here. It is a unit full of physical buttons. It's so nice. So everything you want to operate here, quick temperature change, a quick fan speed change, you can just do it with a button. It's just so much nicer. It's easy to use, also in the dark, also when you're driving. You can just feel your way around and operate everything here. Really nice. Well done. This is just a simple solution. It looks good too, and it's very functional. And this manual climate control goes together with the manual vent controls up here. Don't really like this sort of nipple on the top that you use to open and close it, because this will break at some point. I said the same in the Skoda Superb as well. But at least it is manual control, so that's also nice and easy. Underneath the climate control, we got 3 more buttons for your steering wheel heating, your auto parking, and your camera views. So, not buttons that you use every time, the whole time, but very functional. And we got 1 USB-C over there above the wireless charging pad for your phone. This is very functional as well, but not every phone will fit, as usual. And there's also no cooling or anything available here, so your phone might overheat a little bit. And it slides around a little bit. At least my phone doesn't completely fit snug, and then if you go around the corner a bit too enthusiastically, it might slide off the charging coil. Moving our way down, it is a bit black in here. I hope you can see it properly, but we got the drive control tunnel here with your traditional gear stalk for your normal driving modes and also your regen mode. Then we have a button for your driving modes in terms of sport, eco, or normal. Traction control, auto hold, parking brake, and these 2 are for the hybrid system itself. This is the one you use most of the time, where the car will figure out by itself if it wants to be fully electric or in combustion engine mode. And this one you can use to charge the battery. I mentioned the charging outside not being anything fast, so if you want to keep your charge, or if you want to gain a little bit of more charge, for example, when you're driving into a city or getting close to your house, you can hold that button and the car will serve as a generator, actually replenishing its own battery. So it's a good option to have, gives you a little bit more flexibility. Speaking of flexibility, I mentioned the rear window not having a wiper, which is quite annoying. As you can see here, we have a normal mirror that allows us to see backwards without any issues, nothing going wrong there. But you can imagine if there's people sitting in the back, you can't see anything anymore. And luckily, there is a digital option. So that's actually quite nice. It bypasses the whole window altogether. And this gives you an excellent view behind also at night. So that is actually a nice touch. That is not standard, but comes with one of the packs included in this car. Last but not least, we have the armrest, which is the same sort of not entirely hard, but also not entirely soft rubber here on the top. Not uncomfortable or anything, but just fine. With some extra tray here for your keys in this case, and quite a deep bin with another USB-C, and here also your 12-volt connection. All is well there too. All around, it's quite a nice cabin to be in. My seat is fully electrically adjustable. The passenger seat is not, but it's, you know, it's a comfortable seat. I fit in it, no issues. Also with the jacket, so yeah, quite good. Materials are nice altogether. There's a few small things like these nipples that will definitely break off that are a bit of a quality issue. Over here as well, you know, the gaps in this, yeah, that's also a bit budget. And the same goes if you start to move this around. It also feels, yeah, I wouldn't say fully budget, but a little bit, can be a bit tighter all around. And same thing goes for this sort of separation bit here. I'm not really sure why this is here. You know, my passenger doesn't have legs that come up to here. And also when you start to shake this a little bit, yeah, it's not the last word in sturdiness. Now, I do fully appreciate the fact that nobody sits in its car trying to shake the middle tunnel, but it is something that you notice and something that I notice also when I test cars. Last but not least, we got a nice touch here in front of the passenger with this shelf. Now, this is also soft-ish rubber, so that is nice. And you can see I got my phone and some sunglasses over here. I like stuff like this. It's very functional, very handy to just toss a few things there while you're driving. Very good solution from Toyota. And all around, I think it's quite a nice cabin to be, a comfortable place to be, good overview out, and all around pleasant to maneuver the car from here. This version also has a panoramic roof. No cover here to shield it off, so that saves a bit of headroom. But there is some kind of thermic glass in here that will keep the sun out in summer and keep the heat in winter. So that is actually quite nice. And actually, this being all black with black and gray, it is nice to have a little bit of extra light coming in. Now, some of you in the comments have requested to showcase how to turn off the safety systems if you want to. So there we go. You can't do that in the infotainment system. You have to do it all here in the driver's display. There's a little joystick here on the left part of the steering wheel that you can use for that. So we will start by going to settings. Then we go down one to the LDA, that's the lane departure assistant. You gotta long press that to get to the menu. And here you can turn it on and off. So that is now off. And you can also change if it vibrates the steering wheel or gives you an audible warning. And you can even change the timing if you want to. Then we got to go back to the menu. Then we get the whole list of options in terms of safety systems on and off. But we got to go all the way down to RSA. That's the road sign assistant. That is your traffic sign recognition system that alerts you how fast or if you're going too fast in a certain area. So now they're both off, and you can tell by the orange symbols in the middle that these are the two that you've turned off. So every time you turn the system off, it will light up orange to notify you constantly that you've turned that system off. And this is a procedure you have to do every time when you start the car. Obviously, we got to go for a little drive in this Toyota CHR, and driving means stepping on it a little bit to get on the highway here. Luckily, we have the 220 horsepower plug-in hybrid version with us today, which is the most highly powered version of this Toyota. There's also two regular hybrids available with, I think, a little under 150 and just around 200 horsepower. This one has 220, so it's the most powerful of the range, and therefore also the fastest to 100 with a bit over 7 seconds. And overall, it's a quite pleasant drivetrain to drive with. The amount of power available is enough for the car, weighing about 1,500 kilos, ready to go. So add a few passengers and some stuff to that, and you go around 1,700 kilos probably while driving. With 220 horsepower, you can expect a certain performance from that, and that is actually exactly what you get. It's by no means a rocket ship or any kind of highway monster. Absolutely not the intention of this car, but it is fast enough to overtake, to take some exits, get on the highway, no issues whatsoever. And even when you're driving fully electric, it is also nippy or zippy enough in and around town for normal, pleasant driving. You don't have to think too far ahead. There's always enough power available usually to do what you want to do. Personally, I really like plug-in hybrids. I really like the option to drive electric most of the time and then have the range for when I need it. It's quite nice to be able to drive your kids to school, to sports, to activities, to do your appointments, to do your shopping and all those things. Fully electric, it's just a pleasant way to drive, and then you never have that penalty that you have to charge more often or whatever, because you still have your combustion engine with you at all times. I think it's a nice combination. In this car, that's no different. 13 and a bit kilowatt hours of capacity. Toyota says that will get you almost 70 kilometers of range. Well, right now it is December and it is 6 degrees outside, so that is not happening. More close to 50 in real life testing, but that's still more than plenty to do your daily driving. You charge it overnight and the next day you have a full battery again and all is well. Me personally, I drive about 100 kilometers a week to various activities with the kids and sports and appointments and so on. So for me, that's more than plenty to have 50 kilometers of range. I've charged this car a few times this week that I had it now, just to see how the charging experience is, and it's just pleasant to have that electric range available at all time. Now obviously we got to have a look at the back of this Toyota CHR, and the first thing you'll notice when I get in is how low I'm sitting. The bench is really low in the car, which makes you really sit on the bench rather than in the bench, if that makes sense. And you can also really tell by the fact that there's a lot of space here under my legs. There's very little under thigh support, so I sit a bit too far up with my knees. That said, there is a lot of space. My feet have plenty of space under the seat in front, so that's great. I have a little bit of knee room here with my 1.83 meters, and I got a little bit of headroom left as well. So as far as that goes, all is well here. If you're a bit taller than me, you're going to hit the roof, and also when I move backwards with my head, I'm touching the roof. But overall, if I sit normal upright, all is well except for the under thigh support. What's not so well is the fact that it is just as black back here as in the front, but it is more pronounced here because the windows are so small. You can see that size-wise they're small to begin with, but they're also quite high. Really, the window line is above my shoulder with 1.83. So if you got kids sitting here that are quite a lot shorter, they're really looking into the door all the time. And it can get a bit claustrophobic in here, even though we have the panoramic roof. Feature-wise, there's not much to see back here. We have one USB-C down here, and we have one seat pocket here on the passenger seat. None here on the driver's seat, which is a bit odd. But okay. And other than that, there's nothing really to do here. I got a window switch and a cup holder, and that is all there is to it. So not much to see, not much to do. Not even an armrest here in the middle. But overall, it's a functional cabin that is plenty spacious, I'd say, for the size of the vehicle. If I move to the middle, I'm still sitting low. It's a little bit harder, but I'm touching the roof here with my head. So certainly not a 3 adults in the back kind of car for long journeys. For short journeys, no issues, obviously, but you can already tell how much I'm eating into the seat next to me with my enormously broad shoulders. So 3 abreast will be quite tight here. Now, you often hear me talk about the view through the car. Here from the middle, it's fine, but moving back to my spot here, the seats are quite large, and because you sit so low, there's a lot of seat that you're looking into. And again, especially when you're a kid and you're a bit lower in the car even, and your eyesight, your eye line is a lot lower too, there's a lot of material you got to look around, and the front window is also not super high, so there's a lot of movement you got to do in order to get a good view through the car and get a good view of what's happening ahead. So that can get also problematic if you have little kids back here. Now, if you do have kids and they need child seats, obviously you got to use the Isofix, which is down here. Nicely covered, so no peanuts rolling in here, but these covers are removable completely and not attached to the actual hole. So this is not good, Toyota, because anybody with kids knows that this will fly away and you'll never see it again, and then you're permanently stuck with a hole back there. So that is not a good solution. This needs to be attached. Now, with 4.36 meters, this is not a large vehicle, and that is evident when you're driving in town, when you're looking for parking spots, when you're driving in parking garages especially. It's a pleasant size vehicle to move around. You don't have to be too cautious, like, oh, it's never going to fit, but the feeling you get with bigger cars. And there's so many cameras and systems around this car that you can actually move quite confidently. So that's nice. Once you do get it on the highway, then it is still a large enough vehicle to be able to comfortably drive long distance. I'm comfortable here. The seats are comfortable. I fit in the seats, which is not something that always is the case for me with my enormously broad shoulders. And it's a pleasant place to be also for longer journeys. Something that does become apparent on the highway especially is the sound and the noise coming from outside. Not necessarily wind noise, even though you get a little bit of wind noise around the panoramic roof at higher speed, but especially the tire noise is something that you'll have to get used to. But if you keep it around 100 kilometers an hour like we have to here in the Netherlands, no issues there, then it is a pleasant vehicle to move around in, also on the highway for longer distance. And of course, because you have that hybrid system, you can also expect good fuel economy. So that's great. It is a all-round very appealing package, I think. Now, when you do accelerate hard, you hear the engine working quite hard as well. It's a 2-liter engine, so we can't expect miracles from that, especially not in this tune setup of this drivetrain. But because you have 220 horsepower, you don't really have to fully plant your foot too often, maybe only when you're getting on the highway. And then again, you get the performance that you expect without anything going too crazy. So that is, I think, actually part of the appeal of this car as well, that it does everything for you without too much effort. And when you do ask for a lot of performance at some point, to get on the highway or to do an overtake before an exit, so on, there is ample performance available to do those things within reason, without anything going too crazy. The engine will have to work hard, but only briefly, because you still have that 220 horsepower available, which is enough to push this 1500 kilo car around. A few things that annoy me that I already mentioned in the interior tour. The driver display is way too busy with way too many symbols. It's a full-on Christmas tree. Luckily, this version has the head-up display, so I can actually, I find myself using that most of the time. The safety systems are also a bit cumbersome to turn off. That is obviously probably by design. But I prefer the approach that Renault uses, for example, with one button with your personal settings, that you can just double tap and then all is the way you want it to be. Because now every time I start the car, as I showed you, I have to go through the menu and it's too many clicks. And it's typically something you do when you depart. So when you're leaving your residential area and you're sitting here clicking through all the menus to turn the safety systems off, then, there's one, then inevitably at some point you're going to hit somebody on a bike. But other than that, it is actually a pleasant place to be here and overall good car to drive. Obviously, there are several options available for this Toyota CHR. It starts off with the two regular hybrids, the 140 and the 200, with the 140 active at 35,995 euros here in the Netherlands. The 200 starts with the dynamic at 40,795 and goes all the way up to the 200 GR Sport Premier Edition for 51,695 euros. This is the plug-in, so that is the Hybrid 220, which starts with the active version at 39,495 euros. This is the executive for 46,295. And it goes all the way up to the GR Sport Premier Edition, also for 51,695 euros. So that costs just as much as the Hybrid 200 in the same version. This car specifically, so starting at 46,295, but we have the Bitone Premium Paint for 1,350 euros and the Next Generation Pack, which has the digital mirror, for example, for 2,795 euros, for a grand total of 50,440 euros for this car as it sits right here. After a week with this Toyota CHR, I think this is a very compelling package. If you're looking for a small compact SUV, this is definitely a contender and should be on your shortlist. There's a lot of options in terms of price point. You can really go up and down the range, and there's quite a big gap between the cheapest and the most expensive one. Here in this executive version, I think you have quite a decent deal, even though 50,000 euros, of course, is a lot of money for a car. But I think it offers great looks, good technology inside, space when you need to, even boot space when you want to, without anything getting too crazy or over the top, in a very nice, small, compact package. Drivetrain wise, I really like this plug-in version. I really like plug-in hybrids in general, and this is no exception. The range is not market leading or anything, but it's enough for your day-to-day life. If you don't have the charging option at home or at work, then I think the regular hybrid is also a good option, even though I think the 140 might be a bit short on horsepower, so probably the 200 is the one to go for. Overall, I think it's a great package, good looking, full of technology, and really deployable in any situation that you might throw at it. That's all I got from this video. Give it a thumbs if you like it, give it a sub to the channel if you don't want to miss any future videos, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Cheers!